So during the pandemic, I ran a monthly little virtual party called the PowerPoint Party where people get to present on anything they want. This was my presentation, and my presentation was a designer's defense of Comic Sans. Ooh, maybe Havana will find herself unemployed soon. No, don't. I have a good point. Chill out. So, Comic Sans. Comic Sans is hated. The hatred of Comic Sans has become not just a staple of internet culture, but pop culture as well. Comic Sans has been hated for over a decade. But why? Where did this hate come from? Where did Comic Sans even come from? Well, let me take you through a quick history. It's 1995, baby. We have our first CGI animated movie, we have our video games, and we have the rise of the modern personal computer. Windows 95 came out. Microsoft and IBM brought computers to the masses. This was the first time that your regular middle class income household could have this amazing piece of technology in their homes. This guy is Vincent Comer. He made Comic Sans. He famously saw this program on the right and said, you can't have a cartoon dog talk in Times New Roman. And here were the typefaces that came with Windows 95. You have Arial, Courier, Times New Roman, Wingdings, Marlet, Symbol. Those last three aren't even letters. And then came Comic Sans. Comic Sans was casual, fun, non-professional. This was your first time your average Joe had agency over their documents. Well, in 2002, two graphic designers created a manifesto. Ban Comic Sans. It is a blasphemy to the history of the craft that any fool can sit down their personal computer and design their own typeface. The patriarchs of this profession were highly educated men. We believe in the gospel message. Ban Comic Sans. This sparked the Comic Sans hate. And all of a sudden, you were ridiculed if you used Comic Sans in anything. But is Comic Sans good or is it bad? What is good typography anyways? Is it form or is it function? Well, when you think about form, what constitutes good form in typography? There's symmetry, geometry, uniformity, lightness, boldness, masculinity, excitement. And all of these principles of good form or good design principles when it comes to typography came from the elites in the very prestigious design schools. So one could argue that a lot of the standards of beauty for typography actually come from a very small demographic. Let's pause on that for a second. In terms of functionality, what does that entail? Well, there's legibility. So legibility is defined as this distinctiveness between letters. Can you actually tell each letter apart? And then there's readability, the ability to comprehend text. But did you know that Comic Sans actually makes text easier to read for people with dyslexia? So why is Comic Sans easier to read for people with dyslexia? Well, there's adequate spacing between letters. There are distinct letter forms, so you can tell between I, L, and 1. It's a sans serif. And there are really prominent ascenders and descenders. So then we go back to the issue of form. So again, symmetry, geometry, uniformity, all these things, does the fact that they come from a very limited demographic actually make it kind of limited? I actually love this line from a writer in The Establishment where she talks about a dyslexic person or a student who had to first type in Comic Sans, type of paper in Comic Sans, and then reformat it to Arial or Times New Roman or whatever. And of course she had to change the formatting or adjust the formatting because of course the formatting got super janky once she changed the font. And the writer says, asking a dyslexic to change her font is asking her to take a task that's already very difficult for someone with dyslexia and demanding that she take extra steps to please the aesthetic preferences of someone for whom reading is easy. So is Comic Sans good, actually? It's accessible to people with dyslexia. It was widely available to every person with a computer, and it fulfilled its original purpose. But maybe it's too late. Maybe the Comic Sans hate is so ubiquitous that we can't even see it as a good font. There was a survey done, according to CNN, on trustworthy, readable, beautiful fonts. And the people in the survey rated Baskerville as the font that's most trustworthy and readable and beautiful. Well, in 1757, people back then had this to say about Baskerville. Baskerville is blinding all the readers in the nation, for the strokes of the letters being too thin, too narrow, hurt the eye. So what the fuck is beauty anyways? Just chill the fuck out about Comic Sans. Thank you.